Welcome back to the Call on Our Shot podcast. I'm Austin. I'm joined by Logan, and we're back every Wednesday at 10 a.m. Eastern time. This is our weekly podcast, and we're going to talk about everything sports in this one. But first off, if you are new to the channel, click that subscribe button down below. Click that like button too. And again, shout out to all our COS All-Stars, which continue to support our channel. If you want to become an All-Star today, click the join button on the channel or the link in the description. Logan, how are you doing today? I didn't know what we were going to talk about today, but then we got a bunch of bombshells dropped on us, and now we got some topics.
I know. I'm really excited to do this episode today because I was like, what are we going to talk about? We're going to really sit here talking about Calvin Ridley and his gambling problem? No, we actually got some real NFL news, and it was a big day in sports, and I'm really excited to talk about it. How are you doing?
I am doing pretty well. We've been in a little bit of a topsy-turvy run in the NBA, but I think we're getting back after it in the next couple days. But yeah, it's been a crazy day in the NFL, and I'm excited to kind of drop in and talk about some things. We'll probably stick away from the NBA today, but hopefully we're recording this right now at 7:51 p.m. Eastern time on Tuesday night. As of right now, we don't have any news on the MLB lockout. Maybe we'll have news as the episode progresses, and maybe hopefully there's baseball back by the time you guys are listening to this. But either way, let's hop into there's just two big storylines today. We'll start with the first one that dropped. Aaron Rodgers going back to the Green Bay Packers. Now, last week we talked about him. We were like, I think we both were on the same page. It was he's either retiring or he's going back to the Packers, and lo and behold, he is back to Green Bay. But what are your initial thoughts? This is kind of what we expected last week.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we've been talking about. I know, some people wanted to make it bigger of a story than it really was. I really just always saw this being Aaron Rodgers' best chance to finish out his career on a high note, right? It was going to be the Green Bay Packers. It was going to be an organization that he's given, several really good years of high-level football. He just hasn't really, gotten to that elite level, right? He's only won the one Super Bowl. It feels like Aaron Rodgers has that unfinished business narrative, right? Especially, kind of last year in that cryptic message with Davante Adams, the whole Last Dance thing. I think really we're going to see the Last Dance version and the all-in chips to the table version of the Green Bay Packers this year. And Aaron Rodgers realized, my best chance to win is with the Packers, and he's being paid handsomely for it. I don't know what their salary cap situation is. I don't know what they're going to do really to address other parts of the football team. But I know, right, didn't they franchise tag Davante Adams? I'm pretty sure I saw that.
Yes, he was franchise tagged, yep.
Yeah, so obviously you're bringing back his number one target, but one of the best receivers in the league. So you know what? Green Bay is poised to run it back, and I think this automatically makes them once again an NFC contender.
Yeah, I think I'm on the same page with you. It would have been weird. As much as, I love to see random things happening in the NFL, people changing teams, and we'll talk about the next QB that's on the move in a second, but I just never could picture Aaron Rodgers in a different jersey than a Green Bay Packers. He just has always been ingrained in that green and gold and green and yellow. And I just never could see it happening. And you're right. This is the best chance he has of winning. Now, he could have gone to other teams and maybe they could have built around him. But I wouldn't be surprised if we see the Packers kind of going all in this kind of like we saw with the Rams last year, where they kind of just made all the right moves and get everything going. And I wouldn't be surprised if we see Jordan Love traded too. Now, who knows what Jordan Love's going through, or, how long this Aaron Rodgers deal is. I know there's been reports about a deal that he signed, but Aaron Rodgers came out and said those reports are completely false. So I'm curious exactly kind of how long they tied him up for, but this is the best opportunity for Rodgers to win. He does have unfinished business. He's going to hopefully, he can at least get back and into the Super Bowl and lead this Packers team back into the playoffs. That they've been in the playoffs every single year, but they just have not really kind of lived up to expectations the past couple of years. So I'm excited for him. I'm sure Packers fans breathe a sigh of relief as he's back, because who knows what this team. They saw Jordan Love play for one game, and they were like, "Please, we'll give you our newborn. We'll name our newborn child Aaron." Like, once they saw Jordan Love play one snap, they're like, yikes. So they really realized how good they got it with Rodgers.
You know what, for any of you maybe new school people, maybe the internet reference I'm talking about, but the whole I've seen what I needed to see immediately. No, that was the Packers with Jordan Love. They saw what they needed to see when he got some limited playing time, and they're like, oh boy, like they just, it was one of those like clearly not ready, really young quarterback, deer in headlights kind of situations. And this is really interesting, depending on how many years they are bringing back Aaron Rodgers for. Like you said, I saw reports of like 4 years, but who knows really what's going to come out of the deal. But I mean, this is the ultimate vote of no confidence in Jordan Love being the future of this football team. Because if he was the future, you think Green Bay might try to move on from Aaron Rodgers, but clearly not the case. Jordan Love, yeah, I mean he's probably gonna have to sit and wait, or maybe do they try to trade him for pennies on the dollar? I mean, they're not gonna get much in return for just pretty much a quarterback prospect at this moment.
Yeah, it's tough to trade a guy like that who didn't, come in and just immediately light up the show. He hasn't really
Exactly.
played all that much. So I don't think they'll get a ton back for him. And maybe they'll keep him. Maybe we'll see Rodgers sign kind of like a Tom Brady-ish kind of deal where he signed, 2 years with the Bucks, and then who knows what he does after the third year kind of thing. And I'm just excited for the Packers. Glad they got Devontae Adams back. I don't think it was ever a question that Adams wouldn't be back with Rodgers.
Yeah.
But I mean, I mean, they're going to be one of the front runners out in the NFC. They're probably one or two, right, with the Rams, and they're going to be. I mean, just who they are, and I'm hoping they can, kind of. I don't know. They just have been letting people down, and so I don't. I know Rodgers has a lot of haters, a lot of people that love him. He's got a basically you're on one end of the spectrum with Rodgers, and you got to respect him for his talent. And I'm curious what moves they make in free agency, because obviously the team they've been playing with the past couple of years hasn't really been able to get it done. So I wonder exactly, do you have any idea what you think? I mean, there are some free agents out there, and free agency, I believe, starts in about a week, if I'm not mistaken.
Well, I mean, really, if I'm
Do they
looking,
adjust the defense? I mean, I feel like the defense has been good, and then when it's needed, it's bad.
right, like that's the thing. It's like he was playing with a pretty decent defense, last year. I mean, they had their struggles, a couple years prior to that defensively, and it was always Aaron Rodgers go score us some points, but that wasn't really the case last year. So I'm really, trying to think about, maybe you have small hole here, small hole there, but really the reason why the Packers didn't flourish last year was just simply because Aaron Rodgers didn't really make the big plays that he made in the regular season. He just, like we talked about, I think maybe a couple weeks ago, he was just in ultimate conserve. Like, he was in conserve mode. He was in the whole let's play short game. This is a long game, and then all of a sudden you look up Packers special teams. Okay, fine. There, we can talk about the special teams, because that's really what cost them against the 49ers. Because you look up at the scoreboard and all of a sudden it's, whoa, where'd the 49ers come from? Well, it was the special teams that cost them. And all of a sudden Aaron Rodgers, who was playing a really conservative game, he wasn't ready to make the deep plays, and that's, I guess that's an area of weakness.
Yeah, and I'm glad they kind of addressed that with, I believe they hired Rich Bisaccia, obviously the Raiders interim head coach. I think he's their new special teams coach. So hopefully they're trying to address that area, because that basically did cost them against the 49ers. I mean, their defense played well enough. They just gave up one touchdown, and that was on a blocked punt. So Aaron Rodgers, I think we did talk about it either last week or 2 weeks ago when we were talking about how when he gets down, he's super conservative, unlike, the gunslingers, the young guys that are just, they don't know any better. Maybe Rodgers has a bunch of, just kind of memories of how he's might have made some throws in the past that just didn't go out all too well. And maybe that's why he's super conservative. But I think they're going to be obviously your front runner in the NFC, a team that's going to be, they're going to be up near the top, assuming everyone is healthy. And, Matt LaFleur has got to be happy with him back. And I'm sure Packers fans got to be excited.
Yeah, if I'm a Packers fan, I can finally sleep at night, right? The whole Aaron Rodgers drama, we didn't know really how long it would go on, through March even. But, they can sleep well at night, knowing once again they'll be in the mix. That's no doubt about it. They will be in the mix. But the question is are they playoff, primed and going to perform? We don't know that. It's going to be a long time till we find out the answer to that.
100%. And I found it funny because when the news dropped, you sent me a text that said, I had a Broncos Super Bowl future bet. What am I going to do with it now? And we were just joking about throwing it in the trash. Obviously, you don't have a ticket, but it was just a joke, and you're going to throw it in the trash. And then just a couple hours later, Russell Wilson traded to the Denver Broncos. Now, I don't know the exact deals. I know Drew Lock's on his way, Noah Fant, Shelby Harris, I believe, like a D tackle, and then a bunch of first-round picks. I think their first-round pick this year, second round pick this year, and then a first round and second round next year, and like a swap of fifths. But what a deal out of nowhere, really. I mean, I know a lot of people were saying Russell Westbrook.
Oh my gosh.
Russell Wilson.
Apologize right now.
I'm sorry, Russell Wilson, you don't deserve that. But yeah, Russell Wilson, we were talking about him, how was potentially on the move. We were talking about a bunch of different teams, like the Titans, like we talked about the Giants, or we talked about the Denver Broncos were obviously at the top of that list. The Steelers were on that list too. And then, lo and behold, he goes to the Broncos. And I want to hear your immediate reactions because I have some reactions to this one because this is a big deal. I mean, he's going into the AFC West, obviously going to be playing against Patrick Mahomes, Justin Herbert, Derek Carr, both each 2 times a year. This is just a deep division. Now that you look at the Broncos, what have they been missing the last couple of years? An elite quarterback.
Exactly. You touched on the exact point I was going to say. This is the piece that the Broncos needed for, even since Peyton Manning, right? Peyton Manning had those really good statistical years. He did when he lost to Russell Wilson and the Seahawks, and then he did beat the Carolina Panthers, limping around. That wasn't Peyton Manning. Really, since then, the Broncos have been trying to find a quarterback. It's just been a revolving door. And now you're bringing in a proven winner, a proven championship, Russell Wilson. He's going to change that team. He's going to change the culture. And I think, if anything, he's going to be up to the challenge of playing those elite quarterbacks, like you said, 2 times a year against Pat Mahomes, 2 times against Justin Herbert. Look, I mean, this is one of the better divisions in football now. All of a sudden, overnight, the Broncos emerge as maybe a dark horse, playoff team, at least in the AFC, right? It's going to be tough to say that they're in the upper tier of the AFC. I can't go out on that limb, but he's definitely going to make them a hell of a lot better. And yeah, I mean, I'm curious to know, because the immediate knee-jerk reaction of the internet was, oh my gosh, the Seahawks got the way better end of this trade. Because if you look at it on paper, they gave up, the Broncos gave up so much just to get Russell Wilson. Do you think that was, I don't know, equitable?
The 2 things I think of, number one, a lot of people said the exact same thing about Stafford and the Lions trade.
Yeah.
Well, you'll see how that one panned out. You can see, obviously, I mean, they gave up a lot of them, 3 first-round picks or something like that. Jared Goff, obviously, and some other things. Obviously, I think Rams fans would be perfectly happy with how that trade has panned out. Number 2, as a Jets fan, I know how important QB play is because we haven't had a good QB. I mean, we have bad QB play for the better part of my whole life. And so I know how important a good QB is. You can't win in the NFL without a good QB. It's just physically impossible. You see, it kind of hurt the 49ers. No offense to Jimmy Garoppolo. He just caught a stray bullet. But I just like Russell Wilson. I think what this gives Russell Wilson is, and I think the Broncos, I think both teams got a good end of the deal. Like, obviously, the Seahawks, who knows where their future is? Will Drew Lock start next year? They got obviously all these picks, which they kind of didn't have a ton of picks going into, because they have traded all their picks for Jamal Adams. But now I feel a little bit good about that trade for Jamal Adams. About the only good thing the Jets have done probably in the past 10 years is trading away Jamal Adams for those picks. But either way, I really like this for the Denver Broncos, and I really like a dark horse in fantasy football, and I'm sure his name will get floated up the charts. A guy like Jerry Jeudy. And I think about Jerry Jeudy because this is the guy that likes to go deep, and a guy that runs a lot of deep routes. And Jerry Jeudy was pretty good last year. He just couldn't get hit on any of those routes. And we obviously know Russell Wilson, one of those guys that loves chucking it deep. I'm curious how far Tyler Lockett and DK Metcalf drop in fantasy football drafts. And that's obviously a question we'll talk about probably in 5 months, 5+ months. But it is exciting to kind of think about this Broncos offense. And I think some people look at Russell Wilson and they say, this guy has not been good the past couple of years. I mean, the Seahawks have not honestly been all that great, but I don't really think it's 100% his fault. Pete Carroll was I don't know if Pete Carroll was the best coach. And then we look at their offensive line and run game. It's been kind of non-existent. Chris Carson was a good, fantasy running back. That was mainly because he just got a bunch of dump offs and some cheesy touchdowns and stuff. But they really didn't have a lot of offensive line. You just see Russell Wilson hike it and run for his life. And so I really like this Broncos offensive line. I really like that the Broncos are committed to the run with Javonte Williams, who, you love UNC. He was great at UNC, great in his rookie year. And we'll see if they bring back Melvin Gordon. I think they said they wanted to, but this is something Russell Wilson hasn't had, which is a good run game and a good offensive line in a hot minute. I mean, the Seahawks were putting guys that were D linemen at offensive linemen. That's not going to work. So I'm excited, but in my head, I think the Broncos will have won this deal, but that's just my immediate opinion.
I was kind of hoping you go on the other side and be like, oh, they gave up way too much, because then it would create more argument. But I just cannot argue seeing what the Rams just did. And I forget what his name was. The Rams front office guy that said F them picks on his T-shirt in the Super Bowl parade.
I don't remember his name, but I know.
Yeah, it was definitely one of their front office personnel, but he said F them picks. And that's exactly what the NFL is. Because if you think about it, a first-round pick is great on paper, but how many of them actually bust? How many of them actually turn into that usable franchise type, star talent? Not a lot. The answer is not a lot. I mean, in football, 11 players on each side of the ball. To say that you're going to get a bona fide superstar starter in the first round, even in the NFL, is just not a guarantee. And that's why I'm always, trade for the things that are guaranteed. You know what you're getting with Russell Wilson. You don't know what you're getting with all those first, second, round picks. I mean, they're great on paper. It makes you feel better about giving up your franchise quarterback. But at the same time, the Seahawks are entering a great period of what I like to call rebuilding mode. And as a Carolina Panthers fan, I know what this looks like. As a Jets fan, for a large portion of your life what this whole rebuild mode is. Welcome to it, Seattle. I mean, they have holes everywhere, as you mentioned. So now they're obviously going to be a bottom feeder of the NFC. There's no doubt about that. And honestly, Pete Carroll, your days are numbered. I mean, how you're still the coach. My hot take was that he'd be fired, but I mean, he's still clinging on life support. I mean, that defense, like ever since the Legion of Boom departed, right? And everyone remembers the Malcolm Butler Super Bowl play. They were never the same after that. It was kind of wild to see how they dispersed, and now they're just a shell of what they used to be. Defense. They used to pride themselves on defense, but yeah, Russell Wilson was really truly running for his life in Seattle, and it will be good to see him in a better situation for sure in Denver.
Yeah, and people don't think, I mean, this Broncos defense is pretty legit considering how many bad situations their offense put them in. Still, the defense was one of the best in the league. So I'm excited for Russell. I mean, yeah, you're right. That Seahawks defense has not been, they've been always, when I would make my fantasy football videos or whatever, when I'm setting my fantasy lineup, I'm like, ooh, taking on the Seattle Seahawks, I am in. I'm starting that guy, whoever it is. But yeah, the Russell Wilson should be super excited. I think he has to accept his no trade clause, which I can't imagine he rejects. It seems like this deal was in place for probably 2+ weeks now. But I'm curious exactly where the Seahawks go from here, because what I would hate as a Seahawks fan is to try to kind of, say, maybe Drew Lock's a guy, and then kind of try to build around him. And then you see, oh, he's not a guy, but then, you're finishing right around like 8-8 consistently for a couple of years. And while I don't encourage tanking, but maybe, wouldn't surprise me. And I know this is complete dart throw. Wouldn't surprise me if the Seahawks maybe aren't done with making moves. Maybe they're trading up in the draft or something like that. I mean, they now have, I don't know their exact overall pick, but I know they got the 9th pick from the Broncos. So you can move up with all these new picks, and maybe you go for a guy like Malik Willis or some guy that might give you, a little spark to the kind of your future. I don't know how they view Drew Lock. I know Noah Fant's pretty decent too. So they got a tight end, something, they kind of had a carousel at their tight end position, but I don't know. I'm excited for both teams. Seahawks, we'll see. I would be very surprised if the Seahawks don't make another move going into the NFL draft in about a month or so.
Yeah, Seahawks historically are one of those aggressive teams. They make a lot of trades. They make a lot of deals. I just cannot see them, saying we're going into a season with Drew Lock and Drew Lock only. No, I feel like either they're going to bring in someone, like you said, in the draft, or even maybe, more of a proven veteran. I mean, and those types of quarterbacks definitely exist out in the market. So I don't think it would be crazy to say that Drew Lock is not the lock-in, pun intended, starter. So we'll see.
And I think one of the big things this puts pressure on is two people. Obviously, Russell Wilson, he's going to get a lot of pressure, but so is Nathaniel Hackett, the new coach for the Broncos. I mean, a lot of people think, Vic Fangio might have been the problem with that offense, and Vic Fangio was a great defensive coordinator. Well, now Nathaniel Hackett, he's not known for defense. He's known for offense. He was the QB coach or the offensive coordinator for the Green Bay Packers. Now he's getting another great elite quarterback. He's going to have to build a system around him, but Russell Wilson, we know he's a great QB. He just needs some time in the pocket, and he can make those throws. So a lot of pressure will be on both of those two guys. And, man, it's exciting. I didn't expect this deal to go down today, but we got, boom, boom, 2 big deals for elite top 10 quarterbacks in the league. So hard to beat that on a Tuesday, which we're going into the podcast on a Wednesday.
Yeah, I love it. I love some early, shakeups, because sometimes these moves don't happen until later in the summer or post draft. But hey, I'm all for it. I love talking about football.
Yeah, and as do I, and we're going to be dry on some topics for a while. So let's move on into your team, because there was some things that popped up. The Panthers are listening to trade offers for your beloved Christian McCaffrey, and while they have said they don't plan on trading him, I think they said they were looking for, if they were to trade him, like a first-round pick and a young player that's not, a crazy salary cap kind of ordeal. What is your thoughts on this? Because I know you love Christian McCaffrey. You have your jersey somewhere in there, and where you are. But how do you feel about this?
Yeah, Well, this is inevitable, right? They're going to say, you know, when you're as unavailable as Christian McCaffrey is, right? That, the old cliche in football, especially, best availability or best ability is availability. We all have heard that. And Christian McCaffrey, plain and simple, he just hasn't been available. He hasn't been on the field. It's hard to remember how good he actually is and the high level he plays when he's sitting on the bench all the time, right? So he is kind of getting that injury prone tag. But look, if I'm the Carolina Panthers, please do not trade this guy. And I truly mean it, because I have, I have a pretty okay pulse on Panthers Nation, and I can tell you the fan base is split on this, because a lot of the fans are still, like, this guy's not playing, he's not doing anything for us. I make a trade, get him out of here, kind of thing. But then there's fans like me who, yes, of course, I have an irrational love for Christian McCaffrey, because I'm smart enough and savvy enough to remember what he can do when he is healthy. So it's one of those things, like I just was talking about on the last topic. A first round pick doesn't do all that good to me, because you know what? The Carolina Panthers are one of those suspect teams drafted. Sometimes it hits, sometimes it misses. And they've had a few misses in my lifetime for sure. So I don't necessarily trust Matt Rule. Like I really don't trust Matt Rule. This is a prove it year for Matt Rule, by the way. If you ship out Christian McCaffrey and he's working with Sam Darnold and Chuba Hubbard, Matt Rule might as well be minus 10,000 odds to get fired midseason, because he ain't making it. So the Panthers are in this weird precarious situation where if you let go of McCaffrey and you decide full on rebuild, Matt Rule is really going to be your coach to take you to the promised land? Absolutely not. Please hang on to McCaffrey and just understand that he's a rare franchise piece. Let him prove it. Right now, he's just damaged goods, right? So I need some
I don't
more
think
time.
there's any use in trading him now. I mean, I looked at,
No.
and I gave you the comparison. You obviously know I love David Johnson with the Cardinals, and he had those couple years where he was banged up nonstop, and then they shipped him away. Now they got DeAndre Hopkins in that deal, which I'd argue that was just the Texans being a bonehead, not just David Johnson having that much value. But still, I mean, they got DeAndre Hopkins, and I'm sure maybe if the Panthers could get a DeAndre Hopkins back, maybe you change your mind. But you're not getting DeAndre Hopkins back. And Christian McCaffrey, we do know, I mean, when healthy, and that's now a big if he's healthy, but he's one of the top 3 running backs in the league, and he's someone you can't replace. It's not, oh, let's get a first round pick, we'll go draft Christian McCaffrey 2.0 in the draft. It's not really how it works. There's a reason that Christian McCaffrey's record-setting years. It's because he's a dime a dozen. There's or 1 in a million, whatever the saying is. There are not many Christian McCaffreys out there, and he really is the lifeblood of this offense. And without him, and you putting Chuba Hubbard trying to make him Christian McCaffrey, it's not going to work. And so I wouldn't want you guys to trade. I know you love McCaffrey, and I love seeing him in Charlotte, and just with the Carolina Panthers. Just would feel wrong seeing him in a different jersey. And so I hope he can kind of shut up the haters and do pretty well. I mean, it seems like he's had a lot of bad luck recently. It's not like he's not prepared. I mean, we see his shirtless pics on IG. We see we see him looking good. I know you like those. I know. I see you. I see liked by Logan Stacy. I'm like, yeah, it sounds about right.
Calling our shot is now calling our sus. And you know what? If you've got a girlfriend like Olivia Colpo, if you don't know who Olivia Colpo is, go look her up on the internet after, maybe during this. But if you have a girlfriend like that, Christian McCaffrey has to stay in tip-top shape to maintain a girlfriend like that. Look, it makes so much sense in the world. I mean, he's football ready. Those, like you said, those picks, he's football ready. He's got to get, exactly. You said he's just got to get lucky, right? Like it's bad luck to have the injuries he's had. One of them was a wonky Thursday night football injury, which still haunts me, because I hate Thursday night football when these players are on short rest. So like, that's just bad luck. Like, what else are you going to do about that? So get well soon, CMC. I still need to see you in that Panthers uni, because it won't look right seeing him in some rando 31 other teams.
Oh yeah, no, the Panthers will be probably a bottom 4 team in offense and all stat categories without him. And what I don't understand is, why would you trade him if it's just for salary cap reasons? Now, I know you love the Panthers, but you and I both know they never make free agent splashes. It's not like they're going out, Panthers have signed blah 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 to a 5-year, 125 million. No, it doesn't happen. It's not. I don't know how often the Panthers are right at the salary cap number or over, but it's not like, and we love Charlotte. I would go live in Charlotte if someone told me I could right now. But I just don't. We don't see a lot of free agents going to Carolina, to Charlotte to play with the Panthers, and it's not like, I just don't think getting rid of Christian McCaffrey and what you get back for him, unless it's, another Pro Bowler, it's just not worth it, in my opinion. You just won't, you can't replace that. And I know he's getting paid a good amount of money for not doing anything, but he can't possibly do worse than the past 2 years. I mean, right?
Yeah. Question. Saquon Barkley for CMC straight up. You doing it?
Oh,
I know this is interesting because both have had that sort of recent injury tag to them. You doing that? If you're the Carolina Panthers, you do that deal straight up. I'm just saying, like, hypothetical to give us something to think about.
That's a tough question.
And in the comments too, if you're still listening to this, let us know if you do that deal. I'm curious on everyone's opinion. Saquon for CMC straight up. Who says no?
That's tough. That's honestly a very tough question. I like the question. It's so tough because, in the sake of diversity in the NFL and having things change up, I'd say yes, I'd do the deal for a change of scenery for both guys. I think it'd be a great deal for the Panthers to get Saquon. I know he has the injury title and whatever, but he was running behind nothing last year. And I guess he'll be running behind nothing in Carolina too, because their offensive line stinks. It's just like the Giants, but maybe just to shake it up. Although I wouldn't really want to see either guy in a different jersey. I mean, I think all the people that have Barkley 26 jerseys or McCaffrey 22 jerseys. It's weird to just think about. It's just weird.
Well, I love CMC's ability. Like, what I think McCaffrey has over Barkley would be, by far the route running ability. I mean, Christian McCaffrey is pretty much, he's a hybrid slot receiver, and the Giants never really used Saquon Barkley in that role. Like, he can come out of the backfield and catch his passes every now and then, but he's not nearly what I would say the route runner that Christian McCaffrey is. So in essence, I would like to retain Christian McCaffrey, but look, I mean, you better be getting a young star, a piece you can build around if you do ship him off. Do not give me some BS draft picks, because that does nothing for me. It just makes me depressed.
I would argue,
David Tepper, do not do this deal right now. Don't entertain it.
And I would honestly probably say McCaffrey's better than Barkley when fully healthy, both guys, but it wouldn't be the worst deal in the world. I've certainly seen worse deals in the NFL.
Yeah, this is true. We'll see what happens. Don't do the deal, David Tepper. I'm coming for you if you do.
Who else does what they want? Calvin Ridley. I know you mentioned him at the beginning. Been a very weird storyline. It was released on Monday that obviously we saw Calvin Ridley last year. He dealt with some mental health things. He really didn't play hardly at all. I think he played maybe 5 or 6 games and was out the rest of the year. They didn't really say he's out for the year, but they're just like, he's away from the team, never returns. And then lo and behold, we find out, 6 months later that he's suspended for this whole upcoming year, at least suspended indefinitely for betting on NFL games. And I saw he was betting on parlays, and I saw that he was including the Falcons to win, which probably means he lost a lot of money. I know he said he only bet like 1,500. There's a lot of different storylines that could go here, but what was your initial reaction to seeing this? Because we haven't seen something like this in a hot minute.
Right. So, you know what? I have to push back a little bit on this one, especially to the people that are like, well, the NFL handles punishments differently, right? They handle, domestic violence, whatever you want to get into that, they handle it differently. But here they are making an example out of Calvin Ridley. Fair or not fair, right? That's not necessarily for me to say, but clearly the NFL is once again driving home the point. If you're a professional athlete, you cannot jeopardize the integrity of the game, really, and bet on it, right? Because you can be accused of throwing the game. You can be painting the NFL in a terrible light that they don't want to. There's obviously a lot of hypocrisy that goes into this because the NFL pushes gambling. Some of their best, partners are the sports books. They've opened up a new stadium in Vegas where you can bet in the Raiders stadium. So, I mean, there's a lot of hypocrisy and a lot of people are pushing back. He's getting, a huge punishment unjustly like this. I don't think so. I think they're trying to once again drive home to the players. Look, even if you do it, even if it's insignificant, like some parlay bets or whatever like that, you just simply can't do it because, it puts the NFL in an absolute compromised position.
Yeah. I wanted to kind of go against it on this one, but I agree with you. Now, while I don't necessarily might not agree with the punishments that are given out for those domestic violence and those kind of ordeals, but this is something the NFL had to make an example of. You can't just say, oh, hey, slap on the wrist. Here's
Yeah.
2 weeks out. You can't do that for Ridley. Because then it will just be like, oh, well, if I'm only going to get 2 weeks, maybe, if I'm a bottom guy in the NFL, who knows? Maybe I'll put my whole contract on something. I don't know. But it's unfortunate because Calvin Ridley, one of those elite top 10 receivers in the league. He's awesome. And it stinks that we won't be able to see him for who knows how long, because we really don't know. We saw this happen with like Pete Rose, and he's basically banished from MLB, not allowed to make the Hall of Fame, basically.
Exactly.
But I feel bad for Calvin Ridley too, because he might not have known better. He was probably in a tough mental spot. So who knows how that went down. But I think the NFL had to do this. They had no choice but to kind of, say, hey, we cannot tolerate any of this, even if it's just putting $1 on things and stuff like that. And it goes back to when I was a teaching assistant, or I was a tutor for UCF student athletes, and they had really, really strict rules for this. They said basically you could not, they said you couldn't do sports betting. And this was back when I was college. They were like, you can't do sports betting and all this sort of stuff. You can't help the student athletes in any sort of way. It's like you can't give them an unfair advantage over the normal student. And that was really, opening to my eyes, because I could be tutoring a basketball player and he could be the best player on the team. At the time, Taco Fall was on the team and I got to see him, but he could have been like, yo, Austin, I'm not playing tonight. But he could have been in the roster and on the lines. They were expecting him to play, but lo and behold, he was doing something, an ankle injury, whatever it may be. But I'm glad and sort of sad that the NFL had to do this, and it stinks that it kind of came to light. I know a lot of people have kind of made fun of it, and I joked around that he's a new COS All-Star in my most recent video, but
I saw that.
either way, it's unfortunate for Ridley. Hopefully, we don't see something like this happen for a while. I mean, we haven't seen something like, there's been very few occurrences of this happening in the NFL, and it just stinks, because I really like Calvin Ridley, and it's unfortunate for Falcons fans, for the NFL as a whole, that this had to happen, because you're right. One of the bigger partnerships is betting in the NFL, and it's going to only get bigger. So they're going to have to really tighten up on this. And they knew, with more states legalizing it, they have to nip this in the bud right now, or else it could get really out of hand. But I've seen a lot of people comparing, well, what about this? But then we've heard that story about what Stephen Ross potentially paying Brian Flores to lose games. And then you think about that, and it's like, and what are your thoughts on that? Because that's losing a lot of integrity if that does come out to be true. He's trying to lose games on purpose, because that ruins the integrity of the league as well.
Oh yeah, that's one of those situations. I don't even think we really even maybe we touched on it.
No, we hardly did. We did. It was like kind of brushed under the rug. It was like Brian Flores, like they were paying me $100K, and then the NFL was like trying to sweep that under the rug. Like, no.
Yeah,
what are you talking about?
I think we could have a 2-hour-long podcast of what's wrong in the NFL, because there's so much wrong, and one of what the NFL does a lot of times is favor the owners, favor the high up executives, and it all comes down to, where are you on the totem pole? How important are you? If you're up in the owner / CEOs, that type of importance to the NFL, they're going to cut you some breaks. They're going to act like a lot of what you did was okay, or maybe just a slap on the wrist. Maybe you got, a fine behind closed doors, or some type of things like that. But Brian Flores just comes out and, he essentially is crying to the public, hey, look, this sorts of stuff goes on behind closed doors, and the NFL is not really doing anything about it. I mean, we have as consumers of the NFL product, we have a lot of questions, and I have a lot of issues with just giving the owners and giving those high up executives free passes. That compromises the integrity of the game 100%. And for anybody that wants to say, oh, the NFL's rigged, okay, yeah, if what is happening, if what is alleged is happening is actually happening, where people might be getting paid to throw games, that would absolutely constitute as being rigged, and that is not what I want to see.
Yeah, the NFL can't afford that to happen. I know when people saw this about Ridley, they immediately started posting, clips of. I think the most funny one that I saw was like Nikola Vucevic. Someone posted a Vucevic bet that was like, you can't tell me Vucevic isn't betting his unders, because there was like someone showed him getting a rebound, no one was near him, and he just punched it away or something like that. And then you probably, I know he's someone on the channel we kind of ridicule, a guy like DeAndre Ayton. If it came out that he was betting his unders, wouldn't surprise me at all, because that man does not look interested some nights. But either way, it is kind of an unfortunate issue, and hopefully, this kind of eradicates it. I know it stinks I know sports betting has become super, I mean, it's growing day in and day out. There's a reason, our channel continues to grow, and we appreciate all the new people subscribing and becoming all-stars and all that stuff. But betting is increasing, but the NFL has to tighten up on this. And it wouldn't surprise me if maybe we see more of these issues in the coming, years, maybe as, sports betting becomes more popular, whether it's just being the NBA, NFL, even the MLB. It would not surprise me whatsoever.
Yeah, you just simply can't have it for the game's sake, because when somebody turns on the NFL, the gambling is in their face, right? I talked about the ads and everything, and like the last thing you want to do, if you're even are gambling on these games, is you don't want to believe that there's any sort of outside influence other than it's just the players lining up and playing the game. Because if there is, that's just completely going to ruin the sport, going to completely ruin things. So again, they had to do this. There's no other chance. And, for Calvin Ridley, I mean, the memes, absolutely came out of the floodgates. The best thing to sum this up, though, for him, he wagered $1,500, lost roughly 11 million, because he is losing a full year's salary. So rough deal for Calvin Ridley, but you know what? Hope other players at least learn from his mistakes.
Yeah, and I think that's what I think a lot of people will learn from it is, the NFL is going to make a good example of Ridley, and we'll see, and we'll see when Ridley's back, because there's really no timetable. I mean, they said indefinitely, they said at least all of 22, and hopefully he's back for next year. Kind of stinks that you're a Falcons fan. We'll see. Falcons have a lot of questions to answer as well. I don't know what they're going to do on offense. Will Matt Ryan be back? I mean, they were relying on Cordarrelle Patterson to do everything last year. Kyle Pitts is still, Kyle Pitts, you love him, but I don't know what you do as a Falcons fan. You were so down bad because you didn't have Ridley for the whole year, basically. And then you're like, all right, at least he's coming back. And then you log on to Twitter and you're like, you got to be kidding me.
Yeah, the NFC South, again, it's a toilet bowl division. It's going to be a poverty division. Whoever comes out with maybe 7-8 wins is winning that division. Guaranteed.
Yeah, that division is going to be so bad with the Saints not getting Wilson or Rodgers. Yeah. Probably settle for. I don't know what the heck they're doing. The Buccaneers. Who knows what the Bucks do? Yeah. It'd be cool if Deshaun Watson went to the Bucks. I think that'd be fun. But who knows what the heck Deshaun Watson's doing? That's another question that we have to wait. And maybe that's something that changes over the next week. Maybe we see some Deshaun Watson chatter, because now that these two big dominoes, I feel like he's the next domino. Although he has so many off the field things, which it's been so weird that all that stuff has not been sorted out by now. But either way, I think he's the next big QB domino. Besides him, like Carson Wentz, any other guys you think, within the next week or so, by the next podcast, that might be dealt or changed?
No, I mean, it really, like you kind of mentioned. I mean, the Deshaun Watson thing, it's, I'm kind of exhausted even thinking about it, because think about the timeline of how long that's been going on and still unresolved. There's just some really deep legal stuff. This is supposed to be a fun podcast. I'm not talking about Deshaun Watson and his legal issues. So that we're tabling that. But, like we said, the NFL offseason is just fun to talk about for days like this, where we just see, a complete crazy trade go down. So you'll have to see it.
Yeah, and there's going to be I'm sure a ton of things that happen within the next 2 weeks with free agency starting up, and hopefully we get some fun things to chat about as well. There is no news as of this right now by the end of the podcast that there's any news on the MLB lockout. Hopefully we're wrong, and by tomorrow morning, by the time the podcast goes live at 10 a.m., maybe there's some updated MLB's back. But I would love to be talking about that next week. But either way, anything else you want to close out this podcast with?
No, I echo your sentiments. I would love to see some baseball, but NBA still fun, and you're getting us a lot of new COS All-Stars. So I gotta shout out all those COS All-Stars. You always show them some love in the morning. So a big shout out to you guys. You guys are pretty much the things that put the smile on my face every time I check and I see that number growing. You guys in the community are the absolute best.
Yeah, the All-Stars are the real MVPs. They're probably the people listening all the way to the end of the podcast, but we appreciate all you guys for listening to the podcast. If you want to do us a favor, and it would help a lot if you go to the link in the description, Calling Our Shot Buzzsprout or something like that, and go download the Calling Our Shot podcast. Give us a good rating. We would appreciate that. I think we're at over 1,200 downloads all time. So that's really cool. That helps us, and it helps us get some partnerships down the line where we're like, we have this many downloads on our podcast. And we have some cool ideas for the podcast, maybe bringing on some special guests over the next next couple of years, maybe even bring on some of you guys, which would be pretty cool to do. But
Mm.
that's just a couple teasers. We'll have a lot of things that we are working on, but we appreciate you guys for tuning into the podcast. And this has been Austin for Logan. We're going to see you guys again next week. Hopefully I'm sure we'll have a ton of different new topics to talk about. Hopefully the MLB's back, and we'll see you guys again next week. This has been the Call in Our Shop podcast, episode 27, and we'll catch you guys